Iran is still committed to peace?
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too.
Are you questioning if Israel is committed?
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
Do you have to respond to Iran?
President Trump announced last night that a ceasefire had gone into effect for Iran and Israel and implied that the war is over and everything is going to go on in a good way now. There's not going to be any more conflict. All the issues have been resolved. Israel succeeded in doing everything it wanted to. American officials have said that everything we wanted to do was accomplished. And so now everything's going to be great, or at least that's the claim. But let's take a look a little bit under the surface and listen to what some others are saying in the area, and then we'll see just how close we may be. This morning, early this time, and I'm again still coming to you from London. When I got up this morning, Israel has said that it accomplished everything it wanted to and says, therefore, it agrees to the ceasefire. Iran, for its part, also said it agreed with the ceasefire. In fact, they said that Israel was begging for it, that the U.S. was begging for a ceasefire, and that they have graciously accommodated. So at least as of now, it truly does appear that a ceasefire at least has begun. How long this is going to last is anybody's guess, because both Iran and Israel have their own independent needs for this to reach a ceasefire, because they were both suffering a lot. And so they have something to gain by having a ceasefire for now. Now, if that situation changes later on, then either side could reignite it. It wouldn't be surprising at all to me if the most likely first offender would be Israel, because Iran has the most to lose from the thing turning back on, and Israel has the most to gain from going back into conflict. They could say, all right, after we build up, more of our interceptor missiles, after we get more offensive missiles, once we take care of some of the damage here, maybe do some more intelligence assessments, and who knows whether they may want to go back again after the senior the Ayatollah. Don't know, but the chances that Israel is going to just like say, okay, everything we've been saying in the past that we haven't accomplished, well, now we have, and then they're just going to go on with it. Seems pretty unlikely to me, but again, we'll see how things plan out. But first of all, let's take a look at how some of Trump's supporters and some of his erstwhile supporters and antagonists are now on his side, as long as he does a few things differently. First of all, let's see, because we put Lindsey Graham on here all the time about some of the things he says, and some of the way he's been pushing Trump. Remember, we mentioned to you just a few days ago that Lindsey Graham was, he's a golfing buddy of Trump, and he said all kinds of things about how he should go after regime change and destroy Iran. And we said, well, that's different than what Trump's talking about. Well, okay, so the question is, how is he responding now after the ceasefire has been announced? Here he was last night on Fox.
If the ceasefire is genuine and will lead to peace, it is a major league accomplishment. If the ceasefire is used to rearm and regroup by Iran, we've gone backwards. How can you determine the difference? I am tonight challenging the foreign minister of Iran to publicly say tomorrow, you have the night to think about it, that the Iranian regime no longer wishes to destroy the state of Israel. We've abandoned our policy of killing all the Jews. We recognize Israel as a legitimate sovereign nation entitled to live in the region in peace with the rest of us. If they will say that, that is a giant leap forward and may lead to peace through a ceasefire. If they can't say that, that probably tells you all you need to know.
Okay, so that parody tells you all you need to know, that all we have to do is have Iran just agree to complete surrender. That's what he's asking for. Literally, he's saying everything that Israel wants, all Iran has to do is say, sure, that's what we're going to do. And then this ceasefire will lead to a permanent peace. So they have to have no missiles. They have to have no nuke program. Basically, they have to do everything Israel wants. And that's it. That's all we have to do. So overnight. And then I'll agree with this. Well, they're not going to. They're not going to agree to any of those things. So I'm not sure what that is then going to mean. Again, Lindsey Graham, golfing buddy of Trump. Many of the things that Lindsey Graham said, which were different than what Trump had been saying, now Trump has seemed to be more aligned with Lindsey Graham. You can make your own call there, but the concern is that if Lindsey Graham is still talking to Trump and if he's still listening to him, then he may also conclude, yeah, we'll see how long this ceasefire lasts from our side. Because if we don't get those things that he asked for, then the question has to be, then is America going to go back after it again? As our attacks finished against Iran. We'll have to wait and see that too. One of the other guys who's actually been kind of opposed to Trump for a lot of time has been John Bolton. And John Bolton, he's always been talking about regime change. He's been excited about that from the beginning. And so now then he's kind of saying, well, look, I think that's cool what Trump has done. Just want to make sure he goes far enough.
Well, let me say this unequivocally. I think President Trump made the right decision for America to attack Iran's nuclear weapons program. And I think we're on the verge of potentially seeing regime change in Iran as part of that. I think this is a huge change in the Middle East. It was a decisive action. It was the right thing to do. I thought somebody should do it for a long time, but better late than never.
Why do you think it is that President Trump did this now? Obviously, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, has been pushing to do this for years, including when Trump was president the first time.
Right. Well, I think because of the launching of Iran's war against Israel on October the 7th in 2023, it was going to come down to this at some point anyway. This is Iran's effort to go after the little Satan, and the next target was the big Satan.
Wow. So there you have it, folks. It's not just that we want a regime change. Is it those darn Iranians were coming after us next? Does this sound familiar? This is kind of what the Ukrainian folks have been saying and what the Europeans have been saying about Russia. They're coming after us next. We have to stop them here. I don't know. It's like they have this playbook and they say, yeah, let's just keep using it. Just exchange words here and there with no evidence and just say, yeah, even though, in fact, contrary to evidence, that Iran has showed very clearly they have no intention of they don't even want to go to war with Israel. They've been doing everything in their power to avoid any kind of conflict with Israel, much less the United States. They have gone to great pains to avoid even responding to things that have specifically happened because they don't want to go to war. And yet you just hear John Bolton just categorically claim they started a war. Iran started a war against Israel in the year 2023, and he claims that the Hamas terrorist attack on Israel on 10/7 was the start of an Iran war. Well, we know because it has been conclusively stated by Israeli intelligence and the U.S., it was corroborated at the time, that Iran did not plan that. Iran did not start it. That the Hamas has been a proxy of Iran for a long time, but that's been common knowledge. But that Iran did not start this war. Bolton categorically claims they started a war against Iran to destroy Israel, or Iran started a war to destroy Israel in 2023. No truth to that whatsoever. Absolutely none. And then he conveniently forgets that it was Israel that started an unprovoked war directly against Iran about a week and a half ago with this unprovoked claim that they were close to getting a bomb, even though all the intelligence has said no, even though the IAEA, who's charged with monitoring it from within, said there is no bomb program and that there has been no decision to make it. They just say that it is, and so that justifies what they do next. And then Bolton categorically forgets that, doesn't even mention it as though it never happened. That's one of the big problems with mainstream media. Nobody asked him about that. Nobody said, hang on, there were a few other things going on there. There was even a preceding period of time, though many people think history started on 10/7. It didn't. Even in the summer, forget about the decades going back to 1947, when the Palestinians were forcibly removed from their land and murdered in large numbers. But just in the previous 3 months before 10/7, there were 200 Palestinians that had been killed by the IDF in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip. There was lots of violence going on there, and the Palestinian people were completely helpless. All of that preceded the 10/7. So to say that Iran started a war there is intentionally deceptive. It's just a flat-out lie. But then the Bolton has never been concerned about telling the truth. He only gives a narrative that he wants you to believe. It's so perverse. These guys don't even pretend or don't even try. Maybe they do pretend. They don't try to actually be honest about anything. They just want to give a narrative to make you believe it, even though we have a long track record of what they have said is a lie. And I wish I could find the soundbite. I couldn't find it. I looked, but I would distinctly remember Bolton in an interview, it's probably 2 years ago at least, where he was asked about some things that he said about Trump while he was a national security advisor, about things he supported, et cetera. And then they said, but now you're saying you don't support those. Why the difference? And he said, well, of course, I'm not going to say that at the time. I've got to be supportive of the president, which means, well, of course, I'm going to lie then. Why wouldn't I? I was in the government. So he's just categorically let it out there that I will lie and tell whatever story I need to at the time, depending on my mood or depending on the circumstances. And yet they want you to believe everything that they're saying, so that it justifies the actions that come through. So we had Benjamin Netanyahu launch the first war against Iran a week and a half ago under clearly false statements. And then you have now the U.S. and many of our officials trying to cover over it, claiming that, there were claims here, something else, that the Iran started the war and we were just trying to finish it. There's no truth to that. There's no truth to that at all. The opposite is what is going on. And yet that's how things work in the United States, that and in the Western world at large. But how is that going to affect our security? How is that going to affect the world that we live in? And how is that going to affect trust that we have to have from both our allies and our adversaries, that we mean what we say, you can count on it? Because if you don't have that, folks, you have chaos at the best. And then you have people actively working to subvert you at the worst, because they don't believe anything you say and they fear for their lives. So they take action, maybe later on proactive action, to undercut us in order to have their security. All that works against our interests. Because if no one can take you at face value, if they're not going to do the things that you want them to do, first of all, and then they may do things that are counter to your interest and absolutely undercut you later on. And all that is the predictable consequence of our own actions. But we never want to accept that. We don't want to accept that anything that happens is ever because of our failures in the past, ever because of our deception in the past, ever because of our actions in the near term, the past term, and then the current place right now. We don't want any of our actions to have consequences, and we'll be angry at anybody who suggests otherwise, and definitely anybody who's on the other end of that. Sure, it doesn't matter that Israel destroyed the embassy of Iran in 2024. Sure, it doesn't matter that they assassinated people in their capital city during inauguration. Sure, it doesn't matter that they launched an unprovoked war and started killing civilian scientists. They started killing, assassinating leaders. All those things. No one cares about any of that in the West. When our side does it, our favorite actors do it, we just say, well, the other side deserves it. But with any of those attempt to do anything to us, then all of a sudden now it's violating international law, the norms, the rules-based order. It's immoral, whatever. We apply whatever terms we want, and we are unwilling to see things as they are, as we're doing them, and we want everybody else to have our view too, but they don't. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen to just the people outside the government or influencers trying to say things, trying to convince the leaders. We also have some of the leaders that are saying things that just kind of don't really make a lot of sense. Let's go. There was an interview with the Vice President J.D. Vance, and he's saying a few things. First of all, accuracy is important and claims are important, and this is not lining up.
What we destroyed is their ability to enrich uranium. If they have 60% enriched uranium, but they don't have the ability to enrich it to 90%, and further, they don't have the ability to convert that to a nuclear weapon, that is mission success. That is the obliteration of their nuclear program, which is why the president, I think, rightly is using that term.
Yeah, so he said, of course, President Trump is correct that we obliterated their nuclear program, so now we can rest easy, et cetera. Yeah, but did we? I mean, I've already told you just some things that we can have some evidence that seems to contradict that the Iranian side before the attack said, hey, we moved a lot of that stuff out. We still have the intellectual capacity. You've assassinated a lot of our scientists, but we have hundreds of others in all of the documents. So you haven't destroyed anything as far as that goes. And we may have taken both centrifuges and this reprocessed material out before that. In the news this morning, there's still lots of questions about where is the reprocessed material. We don't know. Our own people say we don't know. But then let's say this whole issue about we destroyed the nuclear facilities, especially the one at Fordo. Let me show you something here. This is the satellite imagery. This is before and after the strike. This right here is the before strike, and then this right here is afterwards. Okay, so this is the Fordo plant. So you see here, this is the bomb entry site. This is what's alleged. There was the 30,000-pound bombs, the GBU-57s we keep talking about here. All you see is two entry points, just two dots in the dirt. I mean, just take a look at it. This is before, no dots in the dirt, and this is after, 2 dots in the dirt. Interesting that even the above-ground facilities, none of them have been hit. The entrances to the tunnels, which I figured would be one of the first targets you'd take out no matter what, they're apparently not even hit. So all we did is drop a couple of GBU-57s into the dirt here. Now, how would you know that this straight down is where that facility is? Because the entrances here, you can't really tell the relief here, but this is kind of a small mountain. They call it a mountain. It's a lot of granite rock. I mean, how do you know that wherever the entrances are, and I don't have them marked on this map, but they're somewhere around here. I think there's 4 different entrances that they all lead here, as opposed to, I don't know, here or over here or over here. I mean, how would we know for sure where under the ground those things were anyway? But let's just say that, well, because they talk to IAEA folks, they have really good intelligence. They know that they were actually under here. You cannot tell from this spot here where that bomb went when it went under the ground. You have literally no idea. This thing could have gone 50 feet below the ground and exploded and nothing happened. It could have gone 75 feet, 210 feet, 40 feet. Who knows? Who knows what's going on? As Ted Postal showed you, because of the irregular formations of granite underneath here, this bomb could have gone in one way and then just been deflected over to here. Or this bomb could have come in and been deflected in this direction and then subsequently pummeled, and its penetration power greatly reduced as it goes down. So it may also have not even come close to what was actually where the actual facility was. Was this the location of it, of the facility underground? Was it somewhere over here, over here, over here? We don't know. And I doubt that anybody knows with a great deal of confidence. But no matter what, we have no earthly idea whether that actually went into the ground and whether it actually blew up in there. So we're claiming that we know that it was destroyed, and we have no such knowledge whatsoever. And so when you're basing policies off the assumption that this worked and you have no idea if it worked or not, that by itself is a red flag. Because if you say, yes, it happened and it didn't, then you have not stopped anything of the Iranian nuclear capacity, if the material was in there at all. We'll have to talk more on that in just a second. But the thing continues on here, because now Vice President Vance says that all of our objectives are met, Israel's objectives are met, based on this assumptions that we can't validate. But anyway, here's what he said.
The president's been extremely clear about America's national objective here. It is to create a world where Iran cannot build a nuclear weapon. We, of course, destroyed the nuclear program that they had, and the president told the entire team, we're going to work to make sure that they don't try to rebuild that nuclear capability in the future. For Israel, think about this. They've accomplished an important military objective. They've helped us destroy the Iranian nuclear program. They've also destroyed the conventional missile capability of Iran that threatened the country of Israel. For the Iranians, I think this is a new opportunity to actually pursue the path of peace. As I said yesterday, what the Iranians have showed through their support of terror networks, through their now failed effort to build a nuclear weapon, is that they're just not very good at war. And I actually think when we look back, we will say the 12-day war was an important reset moment for the entire region.
Yeah, I have a bad feeling that video right there is going to come back to haunt the vice president, that he's already declared this is a 12-day war, over, finished. I think that they said, hey, the 6-day war in, what was it, 1967 or the 1973, I can't recall right offhand, but the 6-day war, yeah, so it's going to be a nice, tidy start and stop. I see no evidence of that at all. So just on its surface of that. But then the other thing here is America's objectives were accomplished. We have, of course, obviously, he said, destroyed Iran's nuclear capacity. As I just showed you from the satellite imagery, we have literally no idea what happened to those missiles after they went on the ground. So don't count your chickens before they're hatched. If the missiles were even in there, if the reprocessed material was in there, or if it had been taken out, if it's somewhere else, if the centrifuges are somewhere else, we don't know. Actually, the IAEA officer, I keep mentioning him, he claims that if these missiles went in there and did what they're intended to do, he thinks it would have caused a lot of trouble.
Even the explosive payload utilized and the extreme vibration sensitive nature of centrifuges, very significant damage is to have occurred.
Well, I think he should have said there significant damage would have occurred if that bomb hit the target, if it penetrated all the way down there, and if it exploded as designed. Even he has no idea. Until somebody has been down inside that facility, only then can you make declarative statements. Until that time, all you can make is suggestions. But that matches up with what we want to believe. So on this particular case, we'll believe them. But we won't believe those same IAEA inspectors when they said there was no nuclear plant. So again, you see this selective claim that we don't seem to really care what the actual evidence is. We just care about a narrative. We seem to be really good at carrying out these narratives. But the other thing that he said in that particular clip there was that Israel has accomplished its objectives and remarkable, and it has, quote, past tense, destroyed the Iranian long-range missile. They have done nothing of the kind. They have clearly damaged it and reduced it. They've taken out a number of launchers, but very clearly also they have not destroyed it because the Iranians continue to launch missiles even as recently as yesterday. Actually, they launched one this morning. It's unclear if that was a ceasefire violation or what that was all about. Apparently didn't hit anything important, but it went out this morning. All of that tells you that Iran definitely has the capacity to continue with its long-range missiles. They talked about how that was basically their one defense deterrent right now that can keep their enemies at bay. There is zero chance they would ever negotiate that away as any kind of negotiated settlement like Lindsey Graham seems to want. He wants total submission and surrender. There's no way in God's earth they're going to surrender to that. So that begs the question, then what? If they don't do as you ask with Trump's golfing buddy, then what's he going to do? Is he going to say, well, okay, other than what we think may have happened under the ground, we have no earthly idea what happened to, I think it's like 400 kilograms of reprocessed material. Just don't know where it's at. Don't know what happened to it. Don't know what happened under the ground. But okay, we'll just call it a day and say, yeah, we did it. So then what you're saying is that we're going to hope that what we claim happened did, but it may not have. And I think it's probably likely it didn't happen the way we think, that we definitely did not destroy their ability to reprocess plutonium, which of course leaves the path open to the potential that they could race to a bomb at some point. And now we just want to unilaterally declare there's a ceasefire and just like the war is over here. I mean, you see, this makes no sense at all. I mean, even from our alleged claims, this is not going to help anything. You can pretend that it's over. You can pretend the long-range missile threat is over. You can pretend that the nuclear capacity is destroyed, but there's no evidence to suggest that's the case. And there is lots of evidence to suggest the opposite is the case. And then now, are we just going to restart it again later when we want to? I mean, you see where this is going. There's some real problems here. Well, let's go back to that interview with J.D. Vance, because one other thing he claims again is that something that directly contradicts what Tulsi Gabbard had said, and he seems to be here agreeing with Benjamin Netanyahu.
I think he's threaded the needle quite well here. We had a very particular objective. It was profound and difficult to accomplish. Do you think the elimination of the Iranian nuclear program? Do you think they were close? And I think the president successfully did that. Brett, they were very close to a nuclear weapon. And what I'd encourage my fellow Americans to think about here is that a week ago, the Iranians were quite close to achieving a nuclear weapon. Now they cannot build a nuclear weapon. We have destroyed the Iranian nuclear program. 0 Americans have died. That's an amazing, amazing thing. Americans, whether Democrats or Republicans, we should be celebrating that.
You know what? There's nothing to be celebrating here because you don't have any knowledge. You just have hope. So why would you want to set yourself up to a situation like that to where it wouldn't be very hard to expose that you were wrong? I.e., if you start attacking them again, they have nuclear weapons. And they have long-range missiles, which they can clearly use at desire. So that would put at lie the whole claim that you had destroyed. And again, the worst case scenario here is that we have pushed them into a position where they can covertly actually produce a bomb because of all the material that they had and wherever they may have these centrifuges now. Even I don't know that. It is possible that they got them because I can't validate that they didn't. But to assume that they have lost that capacity is a very, very poor thing to do. And again, you have given them every incentive to do that. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. But then, you go on to claim that they were close to having a bomb. Again, this directly repudiates what your director of national intelligence said on March 25th. She said they categorically do not have a nuclear weapons program, and the Ayatollah has not declared them to have one. Period. Categorically. That's the same thing the IAEA guy said too, just days ago. And now then you're claiming, because that's what Benjamin Netanyahu said, they were very close to having a bomb. And then, oddly enough, Tulsi Gabbard now seems to be trying to backpedal and saying, they were really close. Only that's not what her testimony said on the 25th of March. What she said was they have the capacity to do that. And that's what everybody has been saying for a long time. That's different than saying they have done it now or that they are close because they're going toward that path. Benjamin Netanyahu clearly said just a couple of days ago that, no, they were there already. They had already started the process. And that's why we had to act. I saw him comment where he made that this morning. And that is in complete contradiction to what our intelligence assessment said, i.e., et cetera. But now then you have the vice president seeming also to go along with the president and ignoring what the U.S. intelligence agency said, not just Tulsi Gabbard personally, but the U.S. intelligence assessments, and clinging to what Benjamin Netanyahu said. Again, that's not good precedence to set for the United States to seemingly just disregard everything our intel says and accept what somebody else says at face value. There's no reason to do that. And if that's the case, folks, then you have a massive problem with our entire intelligence apparatus. Because if we're all wrong there on all these issues, and then you say the Israelis are right, then what does it tell you about the quality of intelligence that we have on any other issue? If we were so far off on that one, then that tells you can't trust anything we say. Which is it? Because one of those two things is true. It can't be we have a world-class intelligence capacity and we were dead wrong there and these guys were right. They can't both be true. One or the other is not telling the truth here. Maybe neither side. We'll see how that works out later too. But the other thing he said was that Israel itself, when it accepted the ceasefire, said that we've accomplished all of our objectives. But have they really? I mean, let's take a look at what Israel actually said here, because this was what was the date on this? This is the 19th. So this is just 4 or 5 days ago. The Israeli minister says that Khomeini can no longer be allowed to exist, because this is when allegedly Iran hit an Israeli hospital, and they claimed that lots of people were killed, whatever, in this heinous, terrible thing, and so therefore Khomeini can no longer be allowed to exist, and so it's got to be a regime change situation. Well, now all of a sudden you have Netanyahu saying, this is just earlier today, just before we made this the video today, that Israel has achieved all its objectives against Iran. It said Netanyahu met his cabinet along with ministers of defense, the head of the Mossad last night, to report that Israel had achieved all of the objectives of Operation Rising Lion and much more, they seem to add. And, quote, Israel has removed the dual immediate existential threat, both in the nuclear and ballistic missile fields, the statement said. The Israeli military added, quote, achieved full air control over Tehran skies, inflicted severe damage to the military leadership, and destroyed dozens of central Iranian government targets, it said. In flight, in light of the achievements of the operation objectives, and in full coordination with President Trump, Israel has agreed to the president's proposal for a bilateral ceasefire. So there you have it, folks, that even Israel is claiming it achieved all these things when there's no evidence that it did. And it's not surprising to me that they agreed to this, because I think Israel needed a ceasefire more than Iran needed a ceasefire, because they were just taking hit after hit after hit all across the country on important military targets, on important research facilities, in the middle of cities, which was causing problems with their population, et cetera. Nothing has been resolved. no issues that led to the war, whether it's the alleged nuclear program for Iran, whether it's the ballistic missiles program for Iran, whether it's what Israel had been doing to Iran and making them unhappy, the reason why they were fighting, etc. So you can't have a conflict that's going on, and all of a sudden they call a ceasefire with none of the issues have even been addressed, much less resolved to anyone's satisfaction, and then claim that you have peace. You don't have peace. You just have the cessation of hostilities for the moment until things change again.
Iran violated the peace agreement and the ceasefire agreement. Do you believe that Iran is still committed to peace?
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too.
Are you questioning if Israel is committed?
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
You had a